Hi guys, and welcome to Bedtime History Relaxing. Tonight we find ourselves approaching an English castle in the winter of 1288, with snow swirling across the countryside and the last traces of daylight fading behind a curtain of cloud. The wind moves over frozen fields like an invisible river, carrying sharp crystals of ice that sting your face and settle into every fold of clothing. Ahead, dark against the pale landscape, rises the shape of a castle that seems less like a building and more like a piece of the earth itself. It is not exactly the sort of place modern travellers imagine when they think of comfort. In fact, you probably won't survive this if your usual winter emergency plan involves turning up the thermostat and complaining about slow Wi-Fi. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights and let the snow carry you back more than 700 years. The road beneath your boots is nearly gone. Only faint depressions in the white surface suggest where travellers have passed before. Snow has buried the ruts left by carts. Frozen grass pokes through drifts in scattered patches. Every few moments the wind sweeps across the open land and erases even those small clues. You pull your wool cloak tighter. It helps a little, not much. The cold of medieval England has a determined personality. It does not politely remain outside your clothing. It pushes through wool, leather, linen, and skin until it seems to settle directly into your bones. Ahead, the castle grows larger. Its towers emerge from the storm one piece at a time. First a dark line, then a corner, then a full wall rising above the snow. The structure sits on slightly elevated ground overlooking the surrounding countryside. From a distance it appears silent, but as you approach, signs of life begin to reveal themselves. A lantern glows near the gate. Smoke drifts from its chimneys. Somewhere beyond the walls a dog barks. The sound carries strangely through the snowy air. One well-established historical fact is that castles during the late 13th century served many purposes beyond warfare. They acted as administrative centres, residences, storage facilities, symbols of authority, and places where local communities interacted with their lord's household. Even during storms like this, daily life inside continued as best it could. You continue walking. Your boots crunch through crusted snow. The sky above has become the colour of old iron. Snowflakes drift down steadily now, no longer racing sideways but falling with calm determination. It almost feels peaceful. Almost. Then the wind changes direction and reminds you exactly who is in charge. You lower your head and keep moving. The castle walls now tower above you. Built from rough stone blocks, they seem immovable against the weather. Frost gathers along cracks and ledges. Snow clings to sheltered corners. Small defensive openings stare outward like dark eyes. A guard appears on the wall walk above. His figure is wrapped in layers of wool and fur. Even from below, you can tell he is cold. Perhaps not dramatically miserable, just steadily cold. The sort of cold that becomes a companion after enough hours. A curious detail from the period involves how people judged harsh winters, rather than relying on exact temperature measurements, which did not exist in any modern sense. Many communities describe severe weather through observations: rivers freezing, livestock struggling, delayed travel, and failed crops often served as practical measures of winter's severity. You pass a cluster of bare trees. Their branches rattle softly against one another. The sound resembles dry bones tapping together. Comforting, or perhaps not. The castle gate stands open, not wide, just enough to admit visitors and essential traffic. A pair of guards watches arrivals carefully. This is England in 1288 after all. Strangers are not automatically trusted. You step closer. The smell reaches you before the warmth. Wood smoke, horse, wet wool, cooking fires, human activity. After hours in the frozen countryside, it is almost intoxicating. One guard studies you. Another glances toward the darkening sky. the storm clearly concerns everyone more than your arrival. Snow continues falling, more heavily now. The wind presses against the walls and swirls through the entrance passage. You enter beneath the gatehouse. Instantly the world changes. The wind weakens, sound becomes muffled, stone walls rise around you. The smell of damp masonry mixes with smoke from nearby hearths. You're not warm yet, not even close. But you are no longer exposed to the full force of the storm, and that feels like a luxury. Scholars continue to discuss exactly how comfortable castle life really was compared to other forms of medieval housing. While noble residences offered advantages such as stronger construction and greater resources, large stone buildings could also be surprisingly cold, drafty, and difficult to heat. For the moment, though, you are simply grateful to be inside. The courtyard stretches before you. Snow has already begun accumulating against walls and buildings. Servants hurry across open spaces carrying baskets, bundles of wood, and covered containers. A stable boy leads a horse toward the shelter. A kitchen servant disappears through a doorway carrying what smells suspiciously like onions. Life continues despite the weather, perhaps because it must. You pause for a moment. The storm outside roars beyond the walls. Within the courtyard, the noise becomes distant. The castle feels like a small island floating within a sea of winter. Above, a few windows glow with candlelight. Somewhere up there is the chamber where you will spend the night. It sounds inviting. Warm blankets, a roof overhead, protection from the blizzard. Reality may prove slightly less luxurious than the imagination, but right now those possibilities seem wonderfully appealing. You cross the courtyard carefully. Snow crunches beneath your boots. A servant rushes past carrying an armful of firewood. Another struggles with a stubborn door that refuses to cooperate in the cold. The scent of roasting meat drifts briefly through the air before disappearing. Your stomach notices immediately. The castle itself seems alive. Not alive in a frightening way. More like a giant sleeping creature breathing slowly through chimneys, hallways, kitchens, and chambers. Every room contributes to the rhythm. Every person plays a part. And tonight, while the kingdom beyond these walls disappears beneath snow, you are becoming part of that rhythm as well. Ahead stands the entrance to the main residential buildings. Light spills through an open doorway. Voices echo faintly from within. Warmth waits somewhere beyond. You step forward, leaving the storm behind for now, and begin your first evening inside the castle. You step beneath the gatehouse and feel the castle close around you like a stone cloak. Not a soft cloak, not a pleasant cloak. More like a cloak made by someone who believed warmth was a character weakness. Still, compared with the open road, the passage feels sheltered. The wind no longer strikes your face directly. It slips through the entrance behind you, curling around your ankles and stirring loose straw across the floor. But the worst of its force is held back by the thickness of the walls. Above your head, heavy timbers support the upper chambers of the gatehouse. Somewhere overhead, a boot shifts, a board creaks, a man coughs into the cold. The guards near the entrance look half frozen and half bored, which is a very medieval combination. One holds a spear with gloved hands. Another has drawn his cloak high around his chin, leaving only his eyes and red nose visible. Their job is not glamorous tonight. They stand between the household and the white darkness beyond, asking questions of anyone foolish enough to travel during a blizzard. That includes you. A guard asks where you have come from. You answer as simply as you can. No one has patience for speeches in this weather. His gaze moves over your cloak, your boots, the snow crusted along your hem. He seems satisfied that you are more miserable than suspicious. A very convincing disguise, really, and one that nature has provided free of charge. A recognized feature of 13th century castles is that the gatehouse was often one of the most important defensive and administrative points in the whole complex. It controlled entry, supervised movement, stored equipment, and sometimes held rooms above the passage for guards or officials. The gate was not just a door. It was a filter between danger and order. Tonight, that filter is busy. A cart has become stuck just beyond the entrance. You hear it before you see it. Wood groans. A horse snorts. A man mutters something that probably would not improve the atmosphere of a family-friendly bedtime history program. Several servants push at the rear wheel while another tries to lead the horse forward. Snow has packed around the axle. The poor animal shakes its head, mane stiff with frozen flakes. Its breath pours into the air in white clouds. The smell of horse sweat mixes with damp straw, leather harness, and the sour scent of wet wool. It's not unpleasant exactly. It is simply honest. Medieval life rarely smells like modern scented candles named Frosted Castle Evening. It smells like work. Animals, smoke, mud, and people trying their best without plumbing that deserves applause. A stable hand appears from the courtyard side, carrying a lantern shielded with horn. The light glows warm and dull through the translucent panel. It trembles as he moves. The flame inside survives each gust by miracle and stubbornness. He speaks to the horse softly. The animal settles a little. Together the men push again. This time the wheel lurches free. The cart rolls forward with a heavy crunch, and the gate passage fills with movement. Everyone steps aside as it passes, loaded with sacks that have been covered in rough cloth. Snow slides from the cover in soft clumps. You catch the smell of grain, or perhaps flour, something valuable. Certainly. A small but memorable medieval detail is that castles needed constant supplies to function, especially in winter. Grain, firewood, fodder, ale, salt meat, candles, rushes, and clean straw all had to arrive by road or from nearby estates. A storm could turn ordinary deliveries into serious problems very quickly. As the cart clears the passage, one guard pulls at the inner gate. The iron hinges complain loudly. It is a deep, rough sound, like the castle itself objecting to movement after dark. Another servant brushes snow from the threshold with a bundle of twigs. The effort is almost comic because the snow keeps returning, drifting in through the open gate as if personally offended by the idea of boundaries. You move forward. The gatehouse walls are close on either side. Stone holds the day's cold and gives it back slowly. When your fingers brush the wall, the surface feels damp and bitter. Tiny crystals of frost cling in the seams between stones. The mortar looks dark where moisture is collected. You notice holes in the wall where wooden bars or fixtures may have been set. You notice an iron ring. You notice the shadowed corner where someone has left a bucket, a broom, and a bundle of straw. Nothing here is decorative. Everything has a purpose, or had a purpose, or is waiting to become useful again when someone remembers it exists. Historians still argue whether some castle gatehouses were mainly designed as hard military barriers or as impressive displays of lordly power meant to overawe visitors before they even reached the hall. In truth, standing here in the cold, you suspect they do both quite effectively. The passage opens into the inner yard, but before you step fully through, you look back. Beyond the outer arch, the countryside has almost vanished. The road you followed is now a grey-white blur. The fields have no edges. The hedgerows are disappearing. Only a few dark trees bend under the snow, their branches trembling in the wind. For a moment, you understand how quickly the world can shrink. Earlier, the kingdom had roads, villages, rivers, fields, markets, and distant bells. Now it has this gate, this courtyard, this one pool of lantern light. Everything else waits beyond sight. A messenger rides in just as the guards begin to close the outer gate. His horse comes through at an exhausted walk, hooves slipping slightly on packed snow. The rider's cloak is stiff with ice along one side. He leans forward in the saddle, as if the wind has shaped him that way permanently. The guards recognize him. That matters. No one questions him for long. A boy runs out to take the horse. and this messenger dismounts with visible effort. His boots hit the ground, and for a moment he simply stands, head bowed, one gloved hand on the saddle. Then he draws a leather packet from beneath his cloak and tucks it close under his arm. News has arrived. Perhaps from a nearby manor, perhaps from the sheriff, perhaps from a road already blocked by snow. No one tells you. You are only a guest of the storm, not the main character of castle politics. However much your cold toes may disagree, the messenger disappears toward the residential buildings, the horse is led away, steaming in the lantern light, the gate begins to close, wood meets wood, iron slides into place, the sound is heavy and final. Outside, the storm continues. The castle adjusts to having one more soul beneath its roof. A servant gestures for you to follow across the ward. Snow falls between you and the hall in thick, silent flakes. The gatehouse remains behind, watchful and dark, its guards returning to their long, cold duty, while the kingdom beyond the walls fades completely into winter. You lower your head against the wind and step deeper into the castle. Snow follows you across the courtyard. Not much, just enough to remind you that winter has not surrendered, simply because there are walls nearby. The servant leading the way keeps his head down and moves with practiced confidence. He has crossed this yard hundreds of times in Wethiel, both better and worse. His boots know where the icy patches hide. His shoulders lean naturally into the wind. You do your best to imitate him. Ahead rises the great hall. Its windows glow faintly through horn panes and shutters. Smoke drifts upward from vents and chimneys, joining the darkening sky above the castle. The building is larger than the surrounding structures, and even from outside you can sense its importance. In many castles, this great hall served as the social heart of daily life. Meals were eaten there, business was conducted there, visitors were received there, and countless conversations unfolded beneath its roof. It was the closest thing medieval society had to a communal living room. Though considerably colder and much more likely to contain armed men, you climb a few worn stone steps. The servant pulls open a heavy door. Warmth brushes your face, not overwhelming warmth, not modern central heating warmth, more like a cautious promise, the kind that says, "I will try my best, but please keep your expectations reasonable." You step inside. Instantly the sounds change. The wind disappears. In its place comes a living mixture of voices, footsteps, crackling fire, and distant laughter. The hall stretches before you. Long timber beams support the roof overhead. Shadows gather among them, dancing softly in the light of candles and flames. The walls are decorated with hangings that help reduce drafts and add a little colour to an otherwise stone-dominated world. Rushes cover portions of the floor, and the scent of dried herbs rises faintly from them when people walk past. Smoke hangs lightly in the air, not enough to choke, just enough to remind you that medieval buildings had a different relationship with the indoor air quality. You inhale wood smoke, cooked meat, wet wool, ale, tallow candles, the smell of dozens of people sharing the same space. After the frozen silence outside, the hall feels wonderfully alive. A fire burns in a large hearth. Several people gather nearby, extending hands toward the flames. Others sit on benches, speaking quietly. Servants move between groups, carrying pitchers and wooden bowls. No one appears especially comfortable. Yet compared to the blizzard outside, everyone looks positively luxurious. You remove your gloves and immediately discover an interesting fact. Your fingers hurt not severely, just enough to remind you they've been cold for a very long time. As warmth returns, tiny stings spread through your hands. You flex them carefully. A middle-aged servant notices and offers a knowing smile. He has seen that expression before, probably hundreds of times. Winter introduces people in remarkably predictable ways. One accepted historical observation is that great halls were often difficult to heat evenly. Even large fires warmed only portions of the room effectively. People sitting close to the hearth could become almost too warm, while those farther away might continue shivering beneath layers of clothing. You find a place near the fire, not too close. Experience tells you that standing directly beside flames after hours in the cold often feels wonderful for exactly 3 minutes before becoming deeply uncomfortable. The fire itself is mesmerizing. Logs settle, sparks rise, orange light dances across faces and walls. Every so often a servant adds fresh wood, sending a shower of glowing embers briefly upward. Outside, snow falls. Inside, fire answers. For centuries, humans have repeated this simple arrangement. You listen to nearby conversations. A pair of men discusses livestock. Someone complains about frozen roads. Another wonders whether a neighbouring village has received the worst of the storm. No one speaks dramatically. Blizzards are serious, but they're also familiar. People living in medieval England understood winter in ways modern urban dwellers often do not. Snow was not an unexpected inconvenience, it was part of life. A curious medieval tidbit comes from household records that occasionally mention keeping pets and unusual animals within noble residences. While not common everywhere, castles could house dogs, cats, hunting birds, and sometimes surprisingly exotic creatures acquired through trade or gifts. A noble displaying a rare animal could impress visitors almost as effectively as displaying wealth. You glance toward one corner. There, stretched comfortably near the warmth, lies a large dog. The animal appears to have solved the entire problem of medieval winter. Sleep near fire, ignore politics. Accept occasional scraps, repeat as necessary. Honestly, it is difficult to argue with the strategy. The servant who guided you inside disappears into the crowd. You are left to absorb the atmosphere. The hall grows brighter as darkness settles beyond the windows. Candles are lit. Additional lamps appear. The contrast between inside and outside becomes stronger with each passing minute. Beyond the walls waits a kingdom of snow and wind. Within the hall waits conversation and light. A young boy carrying a bundle of firewood hurries past. An older servant follows behind with considerably less enthusiasm. Several travellers sit near one wall, brushing dried snow from their cloaks. You are not the only person seeking shelter tonight. A matter that researchers continue to discuss involves exactly how severe individual medieval winters were compared with modern climate patterns. Records survive in chronicles, estate accounts, and personal observations, but interpreting those descriptions remains complicated. Weather can feel catastrophic to one observer and merely unpleasant to another. Looking around this hall, however, you suspect nobody would describe tonight as pleasantly mild. A sudden gust rattles the door. Everyone glances briefly toward the sound. The storm has not gone away. It merely waits outside. The fire crackles louder. Someone laughs. A servant refills a pitcher. Life continues. You notice how quickly people adapt to shelter. Only a short time ago, every thought focused on snow, wind, and cold, and now your attention drifts towards smaller things. The design of a wooden cup, the flicker of candlelight on stone, and the rhythmic scrape of a knife cutting bread. The way smoke curls upward before disappearing into darkness near the roof beams. Comfort arrives gradually. Not because conditions improve dramatically, because human beings become accustomed to their surroundings, even medieval surroundings. The Great Hall seems to breathe around you. People arrive, people leave, doors open and close, conversations rise and fade. The fire remains at the centre of it all, steady and watchful. Soon you will leave this communal warmth behind and make your way toward the chamber prepared for the night. For now, though, you sit beside the hearth while the storm presses against the castle walls. Outside, the kingdom grows colder. Inside, the firelight deepens, and somewhere above, beyond timber beams and winding staircases, A bed waits behind stone walls that are already beginning to surrender their heat to winter. The servant returns just as the hall begins to settle into its deeper evening rhythm. He does not announce himself loudly. He simply appears near your shoulder with the quiet efficiency of someone who has spent years moving through crowded rooms without being noticed. In one hand he carries a small candle set in a metal holder. In the other, he holds a folded cloth, perhaps for blocking draughts, perhaps for wiping damp stone, perhaps for one of those medieval purposes that modern people discover only after doing something wrong. He nods toward the far end of the hall. You rise from the bench. Your knees object slightly, not because the bench was cruel exactly. It was only a plain wooden bench, doing the best it could in a world not yet blessed by upholstery. You follow him away from the hearth. Immediately the warmth lessens. It is almost shocking how quickly the fire's comfort fades. A few steps from the flames, the air cools, a few more, and you remember the snow outside. By the time you reach the side passage, your fingers have begun tucking themselves back into the shelter of your sleeves. Behind you, the hall continues breathing with firelight, voices, and the scrape of wooden cups. Ahead, the passage narrows. The servant lifts the candle. Stone walls close around you. The sound of the hall softens until it becomes a murmur, then a memory. Surviving castle accounts make clear that movement between rooms mattered greatly in medieval domestic life. These best chambers were not always convenient, but they offered privacy, status, and sometimes slightly better protection from noise and weather. To reach them, one often passed through a maze of passages, stairs, screens, and serviced spaces. You step carefully. The floor is uneven beneath your boots. Worn stone dips in the middle where countless feet have passed before yours. Candlelight trembles across the walls, revealing patches of damp, rough mortar, and faint scratches where furniture or tools have scraped over the years. The air smells different here, less like food, more like cold stone, smoke residue, old rushes, and wax somewhere nearby. A draught whispers through a crack you cannot see. It touches your cheek like a wet finger. Very charming, very historical. Absolutely not spa-like. The servant leads you to a stair. It curls upward inside the thickness of the wall. The steps are narrow, steep, and slightly irregular. This is not a staircase designed by someone concerned about late-night bathroom trips. You place one hand against the wall for balance. The stone is cold enough to make you regret the decision. Up you go, one step, then another. The candle flame leans and flutters as warmer air from below meets colder air above. Shadows twist around your feet. The stairwell amplifies small sounds. Your breathing, the servant's shoes, the faint rustle of wool, the distant thud of a door somewhere far below. A lesser-known curiosity of castle stairs is that many spiral staircases turned in a direction that favoured right-handed defenders coming downward. Though this idea is sometimes applied too broadly, not every stair was built for dramatic swordplay, and not every mason was secretly designing a medieval action scene. Still, in a fortified residence, movement and defence were often connected in practical ways. You keep climbing. The walls seem to breathe cold. That is not imagination. Stone absorbs the chill of winter and releases it slowly. Even indoors, even away from the direct wind, the castle carries the weather inside itself. You're not simply walking through a building, you're walking through a great reservoir of cold. Halfway up, the servant pauses at a narrow slit in the wall. Not truly a window, more like a compromise between darkness and freezing to death. Outside, the storm presses against the opening. Snow streaks past in the gloom. Through the slit, you glimpse the courtyard below. Pale under gathering drifts, lanterns move across it like small golden insects. The messenger from the gatehouse is nowhere in sight. Perhaps he is already delivering his packet. Perhaps he is being given ale. Perhaps he's standing somewhere feeling his feet return to life with the same quiet horror you experienced near the hall fire. The servant turns and continues upward. You follow. Your cloak brushes the wall. Tiny grains of frost catch on the fabric. The steps bend again and the hall below disappears completely. Now there is only the stair, the candle, the cold. A question still discussed among specialists concerns how much privacy medieval nobles truly enjoyed within castles. Private chambers existed, certainly, but servants, guards, relatives, clerks, guests, chaplains, and household officials often moved through nearby spaces. Privacy was less like a locked modern bedroom and more like a carefully negotiated bubble of rank and permission. At the top of the stair, you emerge into a narrow upper passage. The ceiling is low, timbers cross above you. The walls are partly stone, partly plastered, with hanging cloths in certain places to soften drafts. The candlelight makes the fabric appear warmer than it probably is. You resist touching it to find out. You have learned enough tonight. From somewhere down the passage comes the muffled sound of voices, not the noisy companionship of the hall. These are quieter voices, household voices. A woman giving instructions, a man answering, a latch lifting, a chest being shifted. The castle above the hall is not asleep, not yet. It is preparing itself for the night. You pass a small doorway where a servant kneels beside a basket of linens. She looks up briefly, nods to the man leading you, then returns to folding cloth with brisk fingers. Beside her, a younger girl holds a candle and struggles not to yawn. The smell of clean wool rises faintly, clean by medieval standards. Of course, let us not become reckless with our expectations. Still, after the road, the gatehouse, the horse steam, the smoke, and the crowded hall, even faintly aired bedding seems like a royal gift. You continue down the passage. The boards beneath your feet creak. Wind moans somewhere within the roof structure. The sound is low and strange, almost like a distant animal. For a moment, you imagine the storm circling the castle, searching for cracks, testing shutters, worrying at doorways, pressing snow against every surface. The walls resist, but not perfectly. No building resists winter perfectly. The servant stops before a wooden door. Iron hinges hold it in place. A simple latch catches the candlelight. This, then, is the chamber, not yet the bed, not yet sleep, but the threshold to the small world where you will spend the night while the blizzard crosses the kingdom. The servant opens the door. A dim interior waits beyond. You see the soft outline of a bedstead, a hanging cloth near the wall, a chest, a small table, a second candle already burning low. The air is cold, but less bitter than the passage. Someone has prepared this room, not luxuriously, carefully, and in a winter like this, careful preparation is its own kind of luxury. You step inside, and the servant follows with the candle, shutting the door behind you while the passage, the stair, the hall, and the roaring white world below fall softly away. The door closes behind you with a solid wooden thump. Immediately the chamber feels different. Not warm. Let us be careful with our language. Warm would suggest something approaching modern expectations. Warm would suggest removing your coat, stretching comfortably, and wondering whether the room temperature should perhaps be lowered by a degree. No, this chamber is simply less cold, and tonight, that distinction feels magnificent. The servant places the candle beside the one already burning. Their combined light spreads slowly through the room. Details emerge from the shadows. A bed stands against the inner wall. Heavy curtains hangs from a wooden frame surrounding it. The fabric is dark and thick, intended to trap whatever warmth might be generated by blankets, bodies, and a sheer determination. Nearby rests a carved chest reinforced with iron bands. A small table occupies one corner beside a stool whose 3 legs appear to trust each other only reluctantly. The chamber is modest by noble standards, by the standards of a traveller crossing a kingdom during a blizzard. However, it looks positively luxurious. You step farther inside. The floorboards creak softly beneath your boots. A faint scent of beeswax, wool, smoke, and aged timber fills the air. It is the smell of a room that has been lived in for years, not cleaned to perfection, not neglected, simply inhabited. The servant adjusts one of the candles. The flame brightens. More of the bed comes into view. Immediately your attention focuses there. It is impossible not to. Human beings have spent most of history evaluating sleeping arrangements with remarkable speed. A comfortable bed can transform a difficult journey into an adventure. An uncomfortable bed can transform an adventure into a lifelong grudge. You move closer. The mattress sits atop ropes stretched across a wooden frame. Several blankets lie folded neatly. A fur cover rests near the foot of the bed. One well-documented feature of upper-status medieval sleeping arrangements was the use of layered bedding. Wealthier households often combined straw-filled mattresses, feather beds, blankets, quilts, furs, and curtains to improve comfort and retain precious warmth during winter months. You reach out and touch one of the blankets. Wool, heavy wool, the sort of blanket that appears capable of surviving military campaigns, livestock accidents, and minor political upheavals, exactly what winter requires. The servant notices your interest. He lifts one corner to show the layers beneath. More blankets, another cover, additional padding. The medieval solution to cold is rarely subtle. When in doubt, add another layer. If that fails, add another person. If that fails, find a larger fire. If that fails, complain loudly and hope spring arrives. The servant says only a few words before departing. His duties clearly continue elsewhere in the castle. Winter creates work for everyone. He nods politely and leaves. The door closes once more. Now you're alone. Or at least as alone as anyone can be inside a castle filled with hundreds of people. Silence settles. Not complete silence. Never complete silence. The building itself continues speaking. Wood shifts. Wind murmurs outside. Somewhere below, a distant door closes. A faint echo rises through the walls. You remove your cloak and drape it over the chest. Immediately you miss it. The chamber's air presses coolly against your shoulders. Stone walls absorb heat like patient thieves. Even the candle flames seem aware of the chill. They burn steadily but without enthusiasm. A curious detail preserved in some medieval household records reveals that people occasionally slept wearing portions of their daytime clothing, particularly during cold weather. Nightwear existed, but practical concerns often outweighed comfort. When temperatures dropped, warmth became more important than fashion. You glance at the bed again. Suddenly the wisdom of that approach becomes obvious. Outside the chamber, winter continues its siege. A faint rattling reaches your ears. You move toward the shuttered window. The opening is narrow. Heavy wooden shutters cover most of it. You lift one slightly. Cold air immediately slips inside. Feels almost alive. Below. The courtyard lies beneath a growing blanket of snow. Lantern-light gleams on white drifts. A pair of servants crosses the yard, carrying something covered with cloth. Their figures appear small against the surrounding walls. Beyond them rises darkness. Beyond that darkness waits the kingdom. Invisible now. Roads gone, fields buried, villages hidden. The storm has erased distance. You close the shutter quickly and the room is cold enough already. A topic that continues to attract scholarly attention involves medieval perceptions of comfort. Modern people often assume that historical households constantly suffered from conditions we would find unbearable. Yet expectations differ dramatically across time. Individuals accustomed to seasonal cold developed habits, clothing, routines, and building practices that allowed them to function in environments many modern visitors would find astonishingly unpleasant. You sit on the stool. The wood feels firm, very firm. The sort of firmness furniture develops after centuries of refusing compromise. The candlelight flickers across the walls. Shadows stretch and contract. The bed curtains sway slightly whenever a draught finds its way through hidden cracks. You begin noticing small details. A carved pattern along the chest lid, a repaired section of plaster, wax drippings hardened beside the candlesticks, tiny marks left by previous occupants. Every room accumulates history. This one has sheltered travellers, officials or household members, and guests through countless winters. Some may have watched storms through the same shutters, some may have listened to the same wind, some may have sat exactly where you sit now, wondering whether tomorrow's roads would be passable. A fascinating glimpse into medieval domestic life comes from inventories that carefully listed household possessions. Beds often ranked among the most valuable furnishings in a room. Curtains, linens, blankets, feather mattresses, and decorative textiles represented significant investments. In some cases, a bed was worth more than many other pieces of furniture combined. Looking at this bed, you understand why. It is not merely furniture, it is survival equipment, the centre of nightly life. The castle may have walls, towers, kitchens, halls, chapels, and stables, but ultimately everyone ends the day searching for the same thing: a place to sleep, a place to escape the weather, a place to feel protected from darkness. The candles burn lower. The room grows quieter, far away. Perhaps from another chamber comes a burst of laughter. Then silence returns. The storm scratches softly against the shutters. The bed waits patiently. Its curtains create a small private world within the larger room. A room within a room. In a castle where draughts wander freely and privacy can be rare, that enclosed space offers something precious, not luxury, not grandeur, something simpler. Shelter. You rise from the stool and move toward it. Soon you will prepare for the night. Soon blankets will be unfolded. Soon the challenge of remaining warm until morning will begin in earnest. For now, though, you stand beside the curtained bed while snow deepens outside the walls and candlelight paints slow golden patterns across the chamber. The blizzard continues its journey across England. Inside the castle, your own night is only beginning. You are still standing beside the bed when a knock sounds at the door. 3 quick taps, not urgent, not timid. The sort of knock delivered by someone who already has 6 other tasks wanting help. Before you can respond, the latch lifts and a servant enters carrying an armful of split wood. Behind him comes another servant with a small iron brazier and a bundle of kindling tucked beneath one arm. Apparently the castle has decided that merely surviving the night is preferable to freezing artistically. The first servant kneels near the hearth built into the chamber wall. Calling it a hearth may be slightly generous. It is smaller than the great fire below in the hall, much smaller. Yet compared with a room containing no fire at all, it possesses enormous potential. The men begin their work. You watch with interest. There is something timeless about people preparing a fire against a winter storm. Outside, nature makes its argument. Inside, humanity answers with sparks. The older servant arranges kindling carefully, small sticks first, then slightly larger pieces, then the split logs. Nothing is rushed. Fire rewards patience and punishes carelessness. A surviving pattern visible in many medieval households is the constant attention devoted to fuel. Firewood was not simply gathered and forgotten. It had to be cut, transported, stored, dried, rationed, and monitored. During severe weather, a reliable supply of fuel could become as important as food itself. The servant strikes steel against flint. A shower of sparks appears. Nothing happens. He tries again. More sparks, still nothing. The kindling remains stubbornly unimpressed. The younger servant sighs, not dramatically, just enough to suggest that this conversation between humans and fire has occurred before. On the 3rd attempt, a spark catches, a tiny orange glow appears. The older servant bends close and blows gently. The glow brightens, smoke rises, a thin flame emerges. Success, at least temporarily. Fire has always been a little arrogant. Even after thousands of years, it still insists on making an entrance. The servants feed it carefully. Small flames become larger flames. Soon the first pieces of wood begin crackling. The room changes almost immediately. Not in temperature, not yet in feeling. A fire alters the mood of a space before it alters the air itself. Moving light flickers across walls, shadows dance behind furniture. The chamber feels less isolated, less vulnerable, less like a stone box surrounded by snow. You move closer. The heat remains modest. Still, your hands appreciate it. The younger servant rubs his palms together and smiles at the growing flames. Clearly, he values the fire as much as you do. An overlooked detail from medieval life is how often people judged fuel quality. Household workers knew the difference between wood that burned hot, wood that burned slowly, wood that smoked excessively, and wood that seemed determined to cause disappointment at every opportunity. Tonight's wood appears respectable, not perfect, not legendary, just dependable, which is exactly what everyone needs. The servants continue arranging logs. The fire settles into a steady burn. Soon a pleasant crackling fills the chamber. You listen. The sound blends with the distant wind outside. Two competing worlds, one of snow, one of flame. The older servant stands and examines his work. His expression suggests cautious approval, not pride. Fire can still embarrass him later. For now, though, it seems cooperative. The younger man glances toward the shuttered window. Snow taps softly against the wood. He mutters something about the weather. The older servant answers with a shrug. Winter does not care about complaints. Everyone knows this. The conversation ends. Researchers continue to explore how medieval communities adapted to periods of severe weather. Records reveal remarkable flexibility. Households altered travel plans, redistributed resources, delayed projects, sheltered animals differently, and adjusted daily routines according to seasonal conditions. Adaptation was not a special event. It was ordinary life. The servants gather their remaining materials. One sweeps away bits of bark and stray wood chips. The other adjusts the position of the brazier. Everything has its place. Everything must remain orderly. In a castle housing many people, small habits prevent large problems. Before leaving, the younger servant offers a final log to the fire. The flames greet it enthusiastically. For a moment, sparks rise into the chimney, tiny stars disappearing into darkness. Then the servants depart. The door closes. Again you are alone. The chamber feels different now. Not warmer exactly. Warmer, yes, but also more alive. The fire occupies the room like another presence, a friendly presence, mostly, as long as it remains inside the hearth. You settle onto the stool near the flames. The wood crackles softly. Heat brushes your face. Your boots begin drying. The smell of smoke deepens slightly. You can hear occasional pops as pockets of moisture escape from the logs. A fascinating side note from the period concerns beliefs about fire itself. Beyond its practical value, fire carried symbolic meanings connected with protection, hospitality, family, and domestic stability. A well-maintained hearth represented more than physical comfort. It represented order holding back uncertainty in a night. That symbolism feels easy to understand. Beyond the walls, roads vanish beneath snow, villages huddle in darkness, travellers seek shelter, animals crowd into barns, trees bend beneath ice. Within this room, however, a handful of burning logs pushes back against the entire season. The scale seems absurd, yet somehow it works. You watch the flames for a long time, orange, gold, blue at the base, each log slowly changing shape, each ember glowing brighter, then fading. The castle around you settles into nighttime rhythms. Somewhere in a distant corridor, footsteps pass. A door opens and closes. A muffled voice speaks. Then silence returns. The fire remains. A draft slips briefly beneath the chamber door. The flame leans sideways, then straightens. Outside, the wind continues testing shutters and stone. Inside, the hearth continues answering, not dramatically, not heroically, steadily. That may be the most medieval quality of all. Not grand victories, endurance. You lean back slightly and feel warmth reaching farther into the room now. The blankets on the bed no longer seem quite so desperate. The air no longer bites at every exposed finger. The chamber has not become comfortable by modern standards. It has become livable. In 1288, that is often enough. The fire burns brighter. The storm presses onward through the kingdom. And while snow deepens against the castle walls, the small hearth beside you continues its quiet work, preparing the room for the long winter night that still lies ahead. The bed has been patiently waiting all evening. Now it finally receives your full attention. You stand before it for a moment, studying the arrangement as though preparing for an important negotiation. In a way, you are. The coming night will be a partnership between you and several layers of medieval bedding. Success depends on cooperation. Failure results in a very long night. The fire crackles softly behind you. Its warmth reaches only partway across the room, leaving the corners wrapped in cool shadow. Candlelight glows against the curtains surrounding the bed, giving them an almost golden appearance. You pull one curtain aside. The enclosed space beyond feels surprisingly intimate. The bed becomes its own little chamber, a room within a room, a pocket of warmth protected by cloth walls. Many noble and upper-status beds of the medieval period were designed this way. Curtains served practical purposes. They trapped warmth, blocked drafts, reduced light, and offered a measure of privacy in buildings where complete privacy could be difficult to achieve. You run a hand across the bedding. The upper blanket feels coarse but sturdy. Beneath it lie additional layers. The mattress itself gives slightly under pressure. Not luxurious, not miserable, somewhere in the middle, which, honestly, is where most successful sleeping arrangements throughout history have probably lived. You sit carefully on the edge. The ropes beneath the mattress creak. The frame responds with a low groan. The sound is not alarming. More like an elderly piece of furniture reminding everyone that it remains involved in the conversation. You bounce slightly. The bed answers with another creak. Good. At least it is honest. Nothing worse than furniture that surprises you later. You begin removing the outer layers of travel clothing. Not all of them. Certainly not all. Outside the castle, winter is busy trying to freeze rivers, roads, and possibly human optimism itself. This is not the moment for reckless confidence. People living in medieval England often slept wearing some form of clothing, especially during colder seasons. Complete separation between daytime and nighttime garments was less common than many modern people imagine. Warmth remained the primary concern. You fold your cloak and place it nearby. It may become additional bedding before the night is over. Insurance policies existed long before insurance companies. A folded cloak beside a medieval bed is one example. You pull back another blanket, then another. The quantity becomes impressive. The castle's answer to winter appears to be simple mathematics. Cold plus blankets equals fewer complaints. At least in theory, you slide beneath the upper layers. Immediately you discover a universal truth. The bed is cold, not a little cold, very cold. The blankets have not been secretly warming themselves while waiting for your arrival. They have been sitting in a chilly room doing absolutely nothing productive. For several moments you wonder whether the floor beside the fire might actually be preferable. Then your body heat begins its slow work. Gradually the bedding responds. Not quickly, certainly not generously, but gradually. You settle deeper into the mattress. The curtains surround you on three sides. The enclosed space muffles sounds slightly. The room beyond feels farther away. A curious observation appears in several descriptions of pre-modern sleep habits. people often viewed bedtime as a process rather than a single moment. Preparing the bed, warming oneself, arranging blankets, checking fires, and settling into a comfortable position could take considerable time. You understand exactly why this is not a situation where anyone dramatically dives beneath the covers and instantly falls asleep. There are negotiations involved. You adjust one blanket, then another. Your feet demand additional coverage. Your shoulders request modifications. One corner of the bedding develops mysterious opinions about where it should be. Eventually a compromise is reached. You lie still. The mattress creaks once, then quiet returns. Outside the curtains, the fire continues burning. The light shines softly through the fabric. Moving shadows drift across the interior, almost like clouds crossing a distant sky. The effect feels surprisingly peaceful. You listen. Wind outside, fire nearby. An occasional distant sound from elsewhere in the castle. Nothing urgent, nothing alarming. Just the quiet language of a building preparing for sleep. Not many people realise that medieval nights were often far darker than anything experienced in modern cities. Once candles burned low and fires settled, darkness became profound. Entire sections of castles could vanish into shadow until dawn returned. Tonight, however, you still have light. The candles flicker gently. The fire glows. The chamber remains visible. For now, you shift slightly. The mattress responds. Another creak. The ropes beneath hold firm. A question that continues attracting discussion among historians concerns overall sleep patterns in the medieval world. Some evidence suggests that people commonly experience segmented sleep, waking for periods during the night before returning to rest. Other scholars caution against assuming this pattern was universal. The reality likely varied according to season, occupation, location, and individual habit. Whatever the exact pattern, winter nights certainly provided plenty of time for sleeping, or attempting to sleep. The blizzard outside shows no sign of ending soon. You imagine snow accumulating along the battlements, drifts rising in the courtyard, tracks disappearing beneath fresh layers, the kingdom beyond the walls growing quieter with every passing hour. Travellers still on the road would be seeking shelter desperately. Villages would be gathering close to their hearths. Monasteries would be closing doors against the weather. Across England, countless fires would be glowing in cottages, halls, manors, and castles. Thousands of small islands of light surrounded by darkness. The thought is comforting. You are one of them, safely inside, wrapped in wool, protected by stone, sheltered beneath a roof that has already survived many winters before this one. The fire settles lower, a log shifts, the sound echoes softly through the room. You feel the bed growing warmer now, not truly warm, merely yours. That makes a difference. Human warmth has begun transforming the blankets from cold objects into shelter. The curtains help hold that warmth close. The enclosed space becomes increasingly comfortable. Your eyes grow heavier. The journey, the storm, the gatehouse, the hall, the stairs, and the chamber all begin blending together into a single memory. Yet sleep does not arrive immediately. The castle still has sounds to share. The night still has stories unfolding beyond your curtain walls. You close your eyes for a moment, then open them again. The firelight glows faintly through the fabric. The storm whispers beyond the shutters, and somewhere beneath your chamber, deep within the living body of the castle, footsteps continue moving through corridors as the long winter night settles fully across the kingdom. You lie behind the bed curtains and listen. At first there is only the storm. It moves across the castle in long, uneven breaths, sometimes pressing against the shutters, sometimes sliding along the walls, sometimes falling quiet for just long enough to make the next gust feel larger. Snow taps at the window boards with tiny dry sounds. Then, slowly, other noises emerge. The castle has not gone silent. It never truly does. Beneath your chamber, somewhere below the floorboards and stone, life continues in layers. A muffled thud rises from the direction of the hall. A door closes with a distant clap. Footsteps cross a passage. Someone speaks briefly, too far away for the words to be clear. You remain still. The blankets have finally grown tolerable around you, and you have no desire to disturb the fragile warmth your body has negotiated with them. The curtains hold the dim firelight close. Inside this little cloth chamber, every sound feels slightly softened, as if the bed itself is trying to keep the world at a polite distance. It fails, but gently. Lo, the servants are still working. You can hear them in the rhythm of the building. Not clearly, not sharply, but enough. A bucket set down, a latch lifted, wood carried across a floor. The low murmur of tired voices. Castle households depended on long hours of service. Even after the lord, guests, and higher members of the household withdrew, servants continued clearing, banking fires, checking doors, tending animals, and preparing for the next morning. Night did not end labour, it merely changed its shape. You imagine the great hall below. The fire there must be smaller now. Benches shifted aside, cups collected, rushes disturbed by a day's worth of boots, a sleepy boy carrying ashes, a woman checking that embers remain useful enough for morning, someone yawning so widely that even medieval politeness cannot hide it. The hall that felt alive and crowded earlier is becoming a dim shell of itself, held together by firelight habit and the stubborn need to do everything again tomorrow. A sound rises through the floor. Scratching, then silence, then scratching again. You hold still. A mouse, perhaps, or several. This is not surprising. Medieval buildings, especially those storing grain, bread, rushes, straw, and food scraps, were extremely attractive to small, uninvited residents. Cats were not decorative luxuries in such places. They were working members of the household, though they probably considered themselves independent contractors. You remember the large dog near the hall fire? Perhaps somewhere below, a cat is patrolling with grave importance, saving the castle from invasion one crumb at a time. The scratching stops, the wind resumes, a timber creaks above you, another answers from the wall. The castle seems to settle more deeply into the night. Old buildings speak when the air changes, wood contracts, doors shift, roof beams complain softly, stone holds cold but timber reacts to it. The sounds are small. Still, when you are alone in a curtained bed during a blizzard in 1288, small sounds develop theatrical confidence. You tell yourself this is normal, because it is, mostly. A faint clatter comes from outside the chamber door, then a whispered apology. Someone in the passage has stumbled against something, perhaps a basket, perhaps a stool, perhaps one of those mysterious objects that always wait in dark corridors specifically to embarrass tired people. You hear two hushed voices, one older, one younger. The younger voice tries to whisper and fails with admirable consistency. The older voice corrects him. The castle returns to quiet. An odd little survival from medieval records is the attention given to candles and lighting. Wax candles were more expensive and often associated with churches or wealthier settings, while tallow candles were cheaper but smoky and strongly scented. Managing light at night was a practical skill, not an aesthetic choice. You glance through the narrow opening in the bed curtains. The candle on the table burns low. Its flame dips and straightens. The hearth still glows, though the flames are smaller now. Embers pulse red beneath darkening wood. Every so often a faint tongue of flame curls upward and vanishes. Light is withdrawing from the chamber. The darkness grows patient, not frightening, just present. Beneath you, the floor carries another sound, hooves. Not in the room, Obviously, unless the castle has taken an unexpected turn, from the stable yard below or nearby, a horse stamps against the cold. The sound travels through walls and courtyards, dulled by snow but still recognizable. Another animal shifts, a chain rings softly. The stables are part of the castle's night music too. Horses need warmth, fodder, dry bedding, and calm handling. In weather like this, keeping animals alive and steady matters nearly as much as caring for people. A lame horse, a sick ox, or a panicked animal can disrupt far more than sleep. You picture the stable boy from the gatehouse. Perhaps he's still awake, checking the messenger's exhausted horse. Perhaps he's rubbing down its coat with straw, muttering kindly while his own fingers go numb. Perhaps he's thinking that noble guests have soft beds and servants have cold buckets. He would not be wrong. A dull boom rolls through the castle. The wind has struck something loose outside, a shutter maybe, a gate board, a hanging sign. The sound fades. You wait. No alarm follows, no shouting, only the storm. The evidence becomes murky when historians try to reconstruct the emotional experience of medieval knights. Written sources describe rules, duties, prayers, expenses, and events, but rarely tell us exactly how ordinary people felt while lying awake in cold rooms listening to storms, yet the body understands some things across centuries. A distant noise in darkness still makes the mind pause. A warm blanket still reassures. A guarded wall still comforts. You settle deeper into the bedding. The mattress gives slightly beneath you. The ropes creak once, then no more. Your breathing slows. Outside the curtains, the fire continues shrinking into embers. Below, the castle speaks in softer fragments. A final footstep in a passage. A cough. A wooden bar it into a placeum. A dog turning in sleep. A servant whispering goodnight. The sounds do not disturb you now. They begin to soothe. Each one means the castle is functioning. Doors are secured. Fires are watched. Animals are alive. People are present. The storm may surround the walls, but you are not alone inside them. You close your eyes again. This time you do not open them immediately. The chamber fades into sound more than sight. Wind at the shutters, embers in the hearth, timber in the walls, the soft murmur of a great stone household settling under snow, and far beneath your bed, in the hidden layers of work and warmth, the castle continues carrying everyone through the night. The sounds below gradually fade, not completely, just enough that you become aware of something else. Your stomach. It has been remarkably patient all evening. Perhaps too patient. The road, the storm, the gatehouse, the hall, the climb to the chamber, and the slow battle against the cold have distracted you from a simple reality. You're hungry, almost as if summoned by the thought. A soft knock comes at the door. You open the bed curtains slightly and listen. Another knock follows, this time accompanied by a quiet voice. You rise reluctantly from the growing warmth of the blankets. The floor feels colder than you remember. Somehow it always does. By the time you reach the door, your feet are already negotiating terms with the winter air. The latch lifts. A servant stands outside carrying a wooden tray. The smell reaches you first. Bread, cheese, a little smoked meat, and something warm in a small pottery vessel. The servant enters carefully and places everything on the table near the hearth. No grand feast, no mountain of roasted game, no endless medieval banquet stretching across 3 tables while minstrels perform dramatic songs. Just supper, simple, practical, and very welcome. The servant departs with a brief nod. The door closes. Once again the chamber belongs to you, and now to the food. You sit near the hearth. The fire has settled into a comfortable glow. Embers shine beneath partially burned logs. The room feels calmer than before. You break off a piece of bread. The crust is firm, the interior dense. This is bread designed to provide energy rather than impress modern food critics. You chew slowly, it tastes good, not because it is extraordinary, because you are hungry. There is a difference. People often imagine medieval noble households eating exotic meals every day. Reality tended to be more varied. Grand feasts certainly existed, especially on important occasions. Yet ordinary meals could be surprisingly straightforward, built around bread, ale, dairy products, meat when available, and seasonal ingredients. Tonight's meal fits that pattern perfectly. You try the cheese next. Sharp, salty, satisfying. Then a piece of smoked meat. The flavour carries traces of wood smoke and preservation methods developed through generations of experience. Winter encouraged practical food choices. Fresh ingredients became harder to obtain. Stored food became increasingly important. The warm vessel proves even better. You lift it carefully, steam rises. The scent is pleasant and earthy, perhaps broth, perhaps a simple pottage, perhaps something that began life as several different ingredients and eventually agreed to become soup. Whatever its exact identity, it feels wonderful in your hands. Warm pottery, warm food, warmth from the hearth. The combined effect is almost luxurious. You sip slowly, heat spreads through your chest. The storm outside suddenly feels farther away. A passing reference in several household accounts reveals how closely food management was tied to the seasons. Castle officials tracked supplies carefully, particularly during winter months when roads became unreliable and fresh provisions could not always be guaranteed. The blizzard outside provides an excellent reminder of why. Tonight no one wishes to send carts wandering through snow-covered roads in search of extra onions. You continue eating. The chamber remains quiet. Only the crackle of the fire accompanies you. The rhythm becomes soothing. Bread, fire, wind, broth, fire, silence. For a few minutes, nothing else matters. The meal itself would probably disappoint modern restaurant photography. No bright garnishes, no decorative arrangements, no dramatic descriptions involving artisan techniques, just nourishment. Yet there is something deeply comforting about that simplicity. You imagine the kitchens below. Even now they may not be fully asleep. Perhaps a cook is checking tomorrow's stores. Perhaps an assistant is banking embers beneath ashes to preserve heat until morning. Perhaps someone is washing bowls while wondering whether spring will ever return. Large medieval kitchens operated with remarkable complexity. Feeding dozens or even hundreds of people required organisation, planning, storage, and constant labour. Every loaf of bread, every barrel, every sack of grain represented countless hours of work. You glance at your supper with renewed appreciation. It arrived here through many hands. Farmers, millers, bakers, servants, kitchen workers, carters, everyone contributing a small piece. Outside, a stronger gust rattles the shutters. The sound briefly interrupts your thoughts. The storm has not weakened. If anything, it may be growing worse. Snow brushes against the wood with a dry scraping noise. You imagine drifts forming along the outer walls. Perhaps some sections of the road are already impossible to see. Perhaps travellers who delayed finding shelter are regretting their decisions quite intensely. Practical experience taught medieval people to respect winter weather. A journey that seemed manageable in the afternoon could become dangerous by nightfall. Delays, exposure, and blocked roads transformed ordinary travel into serious risk. You finish the broth, the warmth lingers, your hands remain wrapped around the pottery vessel for a few moments longer, reluctant to surrender the heat. Eventually you place it back on the tray. Only crumbs remain. The meal is finished. Not large, not memorable in any grand historical sense, yet somehow it feels exactly right. An unexpected glimpse into aristocratic households comes from the fact that even wealthy people often ate foods that modern diners would recognize immediately. Bread, cheese, soup, and preserved meats crossed social boundaries. The differences usually lay in quantity, quality, variety, and access, rather than completely different diets. You lean back slightly. The firelight flickers across the table, the empty tray catches a warm glow. Beyond it, the bed curtains wait patiently. They seem increasingly attractive. The food has done its work. The fire has done its work. The room has done its work. You feel heavier now. Not sleepy exactly, comfortably settled. The kind of feeling that arrives after a warm meal during a winter storm. Outside, England remains buried beneath snow. Inside, your little chamber has become an island of light, warmth, and quiet routine. The hearth continues burning. The wind continues blowing. The castle continues enduring. You carry the tray to a convenient place near the door where it can be collected later. Then you return toward the bed, already feeling the pull of blankets and shelter. Yet the night is not finished with its stories. Beyond the walls, roads have vanished into darkness. Beyond the corridors, household life still murmurs softly through stone passages. And beyond the chamber door, somewhere within the sleeping castle, news carried by that weary messenger may still be making its way from one waiting ear to another. You return to the bed, but the thought of the messenger remains. It follows you like a faint draught. That tired rider from the gatehouse, with ice stiffening one side of his cloak and a leather packet held beneath his arm, has brought something into the castle besides snow. News travels differently in a world without instant messages, ringing phones, glowing tumbling screens, or that little notification sound that somehow manages to ruin the mood of an entire room. Here, news has weight. It arrives on horseback, it gets wet, it gets delayed, it can freeze. You pull the bed curtains aside and sit on the edge of the mattress, listening again to the castle. Somewhere beyond the chamber door, voices move through the upper passage. They are low, serious, and brief. A few footsteps approach, pause, then continue away. The household is not fully at rest. The packet has probably reached someone important by now. Perhaps the steward, perhaps a clerk, perhaps the Lord himself, as if the matter is urgent enough to disturb a private evening during a blizzard. You imagine the letter being open near a candle. Wax broken, parchment unfolded, faces leaning close to the flame. Medieval messages were not simple or casual things. Written communication required materials, training, trust and delivery. Many people could not read. So a letter often became a public or semi-public event, spoken aloud by someone who could interpret it. That detail changes everything. A message is not merely read, it is performed. It enters the room through a human voice. The wind presses hard against the shutter. The chamber answers with a faint wooden rattle. You glance towards the window. Outside, the road has vanished entirely. Even if you opened the shutter, you would see only darkness, snow, and a few blurred lanterns in the yard below. The path that brought you here is no longer a path. It is a memory beneath white layers. Travel in late 13th century England depended on roads that were often muddy, uneven, poorly drained, and vulnerable to weather. A hard frost could make them passable for a time, but snow, thaw, and ice could turn any journey into a slow contest between patience and misery. Tonight, misery appears to be winning. You settle back into the bed, but you do not lie down fully yet. The blankets are warm enough now to tempt you, but curiosity keeps you upright. What kind of message would cross the countryside in this weather? A warning about flooded mills before the freeze? A summons from a royal official? A note about tenants unable to deliver grain? A report of a bridge damaged by ice? Or something smaller, quieter, and more human, such as a household needing shelter, a sick relative, a delayed priest, or a missing cart? The medieval world could feel intensely local. Most people lived and worked within limited distances, shaped by villages, manors, parish churches, markets, and seasonal routines. Yet castles linked those small worlds to wider networks of authority. taxation, law, landholding, and royal power. So when a messenger arrives in a storm, he may carry more than one family's problem. He may carry the shape of the surrounding countryside. A sound rises from below, not loud. A shift in the hall, perhaps. Then a murmur of male voices. You picture men gathered near a smaller fire, cloaks still on, speaking over a table. The messenger stands among them, warming his hands around a cup while trying not to look as exhausted as he feels. Someone asks which roads remain open. Someone else wants to know whether the river crossing is safe. Another man listens to Sani carefully, because tomorrow's decisions may depend on tonight's answers. A small human detail from medieval travel is that messengers were sometimes paid not only for distance but for urgency and difficulty. Speed mattered, weather mattered, risk mattered. If someone arrived through snow after dark, everyone understood the effort behind it. You think of the horse again, the steam rising from its flanks, the stable boy leading it away. A message requires a rider. Yes, but also an animal capable of carrying him. Roads are not crossed by parchment alone. The castle suddenly feels less like a refuge and more like a listening post. Beyond its walls, the blizzard has not stopped the kingdom entirely. It has slowed it, narrowed it, forced it through gates and into chambers, but it has not silenced it. Somewhere beyond the storm, other people are wondering about this castle. Will the messenger arrive? Will the answer come back? Will the road be passable by morning? Will the snow cut off the valley? Will the mill be able to grind? Will the market be delayed? Will the Lord's men ride out? Questions move even when people cannot. The documentary traces of medieval winter emergencies are often scattered and incomplete. A damaged bridge may appear as an expense. A failed journey may appear as a delay in an account. A shortage may appear as a sudden purchase. The lived anxiety behind those lines is harder to recover. But nights like this help the imagination understand the gaps. You pull one blanket higher. The food has made you sleepier now. Warmth spreads slowly through your limbs, still. The idea of blocked roads lingers. Modern people often treat roads as background, they exist. They continue. They remain visible under painted lines and signs and headlights. But here, roads are fragile agreements between land, weather, labour, and memory. Snow can erase them in a single evening. No road means no market. No market means fewer supplies. No supplies mean careful rationing. No safe crossing means news trapped on one side of a river. No messenger means uncertainty spreading from house to house. The storm outside is not merely weather. It is a force that changes decisions. The voices beyond the passage fade. A door opens. Light briefly slips beneath your own door, thin and gold. Then the door, somewhere outside, closes, and the strip of light disappears. The castle becomes quieter again. Perhaps the message has been read. Perhaps the answer will wait until morning. No one rides back tonight unless the matter is desperate. You hope it is not desperate. A very reasonable hope. Really. This is supposed to be bedtime history, not bedtime frostbite with administrative complications. You lie down at last. The mattress gives beneath you. The curtains settle around the bed. The chamber shrinks again to warm wool, fading firelight, and the muffled storm. Yet beyond your small enclosure, the map of England seems to stretch outward in your mind. Snow over fields, snow on church roofs, snow along hedges, snow hiding cart tracks, snow filling hoof prints almost as soon as they are made. In manor houses, stewards worry over stores. In cottages, families draw closer to hearths. In monasteries, bells mark hours that weather cannot erase. In castles, guards watch gates while messengers arrive late and half frozen, carrying scraps of the wider world under their cloaks. You close your eyes. The storm presses against the shutters again. But now its sound has changed in your imagination. It is no longer only wind, it is distance becoming difficult. It is news slowed by snow. It is the kingdom drawing inward around each source of fire. And here, behind curtains in a cold chamber above a dimming hall, you listen as the castle holds its breath and waits for morning. At some point, without quite noticing when, your thoughts begin drifting away from roads and messengers. The bed grows warmer, the blankets feel heavier, the sounds of the castle become softer. You hover in that strange place between sleeping and waking where time loses some of its structure. Then a bell rings, not loudly, not urgently, just clearly. The sound arrives through layers of stone, timber, cloth, and distance. One note, then another, then slants. You open your eyes. For a moment you're unsure whether you imagined it. The fire in the hearth has settled lower than before. The chamber glows with dim orange light. Shadows cling to corners. Then the bell sounds again. Far away, steady, measured. You listen. The chapel. The castle chapel lies somewhere within the complex, perhaps tucked beside other buildings, perhaps occupying a small but respected place near the heart of the household. Even now, while much of the castle sleeps, someone remains awake. A priest, a clerk, a servant assigned to religious duties, someone marking the passage of time. Religion shaped daily life in ways that are difficult for many modern people to imagine. Bells regulated routines, announced services, marked important events, and divided the hours of day and night. Even people who could not read often knew time through sound. The bell fades. The silence that follows feels deeper. You remain beneath the blankets, listening. Somewhere beyond the chamber walls, a handful of candles may still burn before an altar. Their flames would flicker much like the one beside your bed. Wax would slowly soften and drip. Smoke would rise toward timber beams. The image is comforting. Across the castle, many things are changing tonight. Fires burn lower, snow grows deeper, roads disappear. Yet the bell continues, marking the hours. Certain routines survive every storm. The wind brushes the shutters again. You pull the blanket a little higher. The movement releases a pocket of trapped warmth. Wonderful. Briefly, then gone. A small reality of medieval sleeping arrangements is that maintaining warmth often required strategic blanket management. Every unnecessary movement risked inviting cold air into places where cold air was definitely not welcome. You settle carefully, lesson learned. Outside, snow continues falling. Inside, the castle drifts through the night. Your thoughts wander toward the chapel. Many medieval castles maintained chapels because religious observance formed a regular part of noble household life. Prayers, services, feast days, fasts, and seasonal celebrations shaped the calendar. Even people who varied greatly in personal devotion still lived within a world structured by religious rhythms. Tonight, those rhythms continue. Somewhere a prayer may be spoken, somewhere a candle may be trimmed, somewhere a bell rope may be hanging still after its recent use. The thought creates an unexpected sense of connection. You are alone in your chamber, yet you are not isolated. Every room around you contains people moving through the same night. Guards on walls, servants in passages, stable workers near horses, officials reading messages, clergy tending sacred spaces. Everyone enclosed within the same storm. The fire gives a soft crack. One ember collapses inward. A tiny shower of sparks glows briefly and disappears. You watch the movement through half-closed eyes. The room feels smaller now. Not physically, emotionally, the way familiar places do after enough quiet time. A mention tucked into several medieval accounts describes travellers making donations at chapels after surviving dangerous journeys. Roads could be hazardous even during good weather. During severe winters, safe arrival often felt worthy of gratitude. Considering the conditions outside, you understand that instinct. The blizzard has become easier to forget from beneath blankets, yet every now and then the wind reminds you. A stronger gust pushes against the castle. The walls absorb most of the force. Still, a low sound passes through stone and timber like a distant surr. The building itself seems aware of the weather. You close your eyes again. The bell no longer rings. The castle grows quieter. Your breathing slows. Time passes. Perhaps minutes, perhaps longer. Then another sound emerges. Not from the chapel, from somewhere below, singing, very faint, almost impossible to hear. You listen carefully. A single voice, maybe two, not formal singing, not a choir, more likely a servant finishing some task while humming softly to stay awake. The melody rises and falls, then disappears. You smile. People have always done that. Whether carrying water, sweeping floors, mending clothing, tending fires, or walking long roads, someone eventually begins humming. Entire centuries change. Human habits remain stubbornly familiar. The surviving evidence becomes much thinner when trying to reconstruct ordinary sounds. We know what people wrote, bought, repaired, taxed, and inherited. We know far less about the songs they hummed while carrying buckets on cold nights. Yet those sounds surely existed. The brief melody makes the castle feel more human than ever. Not an ancient monument, not a fortress, a home, a temporary home for some, a lifelong home for others, a place where people work, worry, laugh, pray, complain, eat, and occasionally sing while half asleep. The fire sinks lower, the chamber darkens, the candle on the table burns weakly now. Wax pools beneath it. The flame narrows. Soon someone would normally extinguish it to save resources. Instead, it simply continues shrinking. Its light barely reaches the far wall. The bed curtains seem darker. The ceiling timbers fade from view. Only the hearth remains a reliable source of illumination. You shift slightly. The mattress answers with a familiar creak. The sound no longer surprises you. It has become part of the room's personality. Outside, winter rules the countryside. Inside, night rules the castle. The two powers coexist without meeting. For now. Tomorrow they will collide again when doors open. Servants emerge and people attempt to resume ordinary life. Tonight, however, the castle belongs to quieter things. Bells, prayers, distant songs and fading candles, dying embers, the soft breathing of sleeping guests. You feel yourself drifting further from wakefulness. Thoughts become slower. Images blur. The chapel bell seems farther away now, though its echo lingers in memory. Beyond the walls, snow continues falling across fields, villages, forests and roads. Within the castle, the night deepens, and somewhere in the darkness, another hour quietly begins. You wake because the cold has returned. Not all at once, it has crept back carefully, politely, almost sneakily, like a guest who knows it was not invited but has found a side door. At first, you're not fully awake. You only sense that something has changed. The bedding still covers you. The curtains still hang around the bed. The chamber still exists in darkness beyond them. Yet the little pocket of warmth you made earlier has thinned. Your nose feels cold. Oh, that is usually the first betrayal. Then your hands, then the space near your feet, where one blanket has shifted just enough to create a small but meaningful disaster. You lie still for a moment, hoping the problem will solve itself. It does not. Medieval winter has no customer service department. You draw your knees slightly upward and pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders. The fabric is heavy and scratchy against your cheek, but you're far beyond caring about elegance. Elegance belongs to people painted in portraits. You are busy surviving a castle bedroom at midnight. Beyond the curtains, the fire has changed. Earlier it spoke in crackles and bright pops. Now it breathes in embers. A low red glow flickers through the gap in the bed curtains. The hearth still lives, but quietly. The logs have collapsed inward. Their edges pulse with heat, then darken, then pulse again. You listen for footsteps. None come, no servant enters to rescue the fire. No helpful medieval heating specialist appears with fresh logs and a reassuring smile. The castle has many people inside it, yes, but each one has duties, rank, fatigue, and a fairly strong interest in not wandering through freezing corridors unless necessary. So you remain where you are, the sensible choice. In large households, fires were often banked rather than kept blazing through every hour. Embers could be covered or managed so that morning fires might be revived more easily. Fuel mattered too much to waste casually. A roaring private hearth all night would have been pleasant, certainly, but also greedy, expensive, and likely to earn quiet judgment from someone hauling logs upstairs. You picture the younger servant from earlier, carrying wood with tired arms. Suddenly, the idea of demanding more fuel feels less noble. Still, your toes disagree. They would like to submit a formal complaint. A gust of wind presses against the shutter. The cloth tucked into its edge flutters. A thin line of air slips across the chamber and finds its way through the bed curtains. It touches your face. You close your eyes harder, as if that might help. It does not. The cold has a strange intimacy in this room. It is not the vast outdoor cold of the road, not the violent wind of the gatehouse. This is smaller, quieter, and more personal. It comes through cracks. It gathers near the floor. It waits in corners. It finds your skin wherever wool has failed. You turn carefully onto your side. The ropes beneath the mattress creak. A faint scent rises from the bedding, wool, linen, smoke, and the faint earthy dryness of straw beneath the softer layers. It is not unpleasant. It is simply the smell of materials doing their work. Some bedding in this period relied on straw or plant material beneath better coverings. In wealthier rooms, feather beds and finer linens might appear. But even then, comfort depended on maintenance. Straw had to be changed. Fabric had to be aired. Blankets had to be kept from damp. A neglected bed could become less a place of rest and more a historic argument with mildew. Tonight, at least. This bed is dry. That is no small blessing. You tuck the blanket beneath your shoulder. Better. Not perfect, but better. The darkness inside the curtains grows thicker as the hearth fades. The candle on the table outside must have died while you slept. There is no golden flame now, no soft trembling light, only the dull red of embers leaking through cloth. The room beyond the bed becomes imagination. Chest, table, stool, shutter, wall hanging, all present, but unseen. You know they are there because you remember them. That is enough. Another sound travels through the castle, a slow drip, then another. Somewhere, snow or ice has found a warmer surface and begun melting. The drops fall at long intervals, each one tiny and distinct. Drip, silence, drip. The noise seems larger in darkness. You wonder if anyone else hears it. Perhaps a servant sleeping in a lower room hears the same sound and ignores it with admirable skill. Perhaps a guard hears only the wind. Perhaps the horses hear everything and judge humans for building complicated shelters that still leak. No one knows exactly how cold chambers like this became during severe winter nights. The answer must have varied widely. A room near a kitchen chimney would feel different from a room in an exposed tower. A well-stocked household would fare better than a strained one. Thick curtains and careful servants helped, but stone remained stone, and winter remained winter. Your chamber tonight sits somewhere between hardship and comfort, a medieval luxury that still requires courage. You breathe slowly. The air beneath the blankets warms with each breath. Outside them, the chamber cools. You become aware of your own body as a small hearth, not poetic, practical. Your warmth matters. The blankets do not create heat by magic. They trap what you provide. In this bed, you are both guest and furnace, which is a little rude but historically accurate. The storm shifts again. For several moments the wind quiets. The silence that follows feels enormous. Without the constant rushing outside, and you hear your own breathing, you hear a faint settling in the timber frame of the bed. You hear the embers whispering to themselves, then far away. A door closes, softly, someone is awake. The thought is oddly reassuring. Perhaps a servant checks the corridor. Perhaps guard comes off duty. Perhaps someone rises for prayer. In a castle, even midnight has witnesses. You relax slightly. The cold is still there, but it no longer feels like a surprise. It has become part of the room again, part of the night, part of the long winter rhythm you are learning by experience. Earlier, you wanted warmth. Now you understand the more realistic goal. Enough warmth, enough shelter, enough sleep, enough fire left to greet morning. That is the scale of comfort in 1288. You adjust the last loose edge of blanket near your feet. This time the arrangement holds. The small icy gap disappears. Your body settles. The bed stops creaking. The embers glow faintly beyond the curtain. Then dim. Then glow again, and the storm resumes outside, softer now, as though moving farther along the walls. You close your eyes. The cold remains around you, but not inside you, not yet. And beneath the heavy wool, behind the dark curtains, inside the stone castle, you begin drifting once more into sleep while winter waits patiently on the other side of every wall. Sometime later, you wake again, not fully, just enough to notice movement beyond the bed curtains. A faint glow has appeared in the chamber. Not dawn, not even closer. This light moves. It brightens, then fades, then brightens again. You blink slowly. The glow slides across the fabric of the curtains, turning the wool into a pale amber screen. Someone is in the passage outside, a lantern perhaps, or a candle. You remain still and listen. The footsteps arrive first, soft, measured, not hurried, a servant's pace, not the stride of a guard responding to trouble, not the nervous rush of bad news, just work continuing in the middle of the night. The footsteps pause outside your door. For a moment you wonder if someone intends to enter. Instead, a small metallic sound follows, perhaps a latch being checked. Then the footsteps continue down the corridor. The glow fades. Darkness returns. Yet now you're awake enough to think about all the people still moving through the castle while most of the household sleeps. The higher one stood in the social hierarchy. The more likely comfort seemed to appear naturally. Yet comfort never appeared naturally at all. Someone carried it. Someone cleaned it. Someone repaired it. Someone stayed awake to maintain it. The blankets covering you did not reach this room on their own. The firewood did not climb the stairs willingly. The shutters were not secured by the magical forces. Behind every warm chamber stood a chain of labour. Tonight that labour continues. You picture the servant in the passage, perhaps carrying fresh candles, perhaps checking doors, perhaps bringing additional blankets to another guest, perhaps delivering a message that cannot wait until morning. A castle is a machine powered by people. And machines do not completely stop simply because midnight arrives. The storm outside seems quieter now, not weaker, just farther away. The thick snow muffles sound across the courtyard and surrounding countryside. Snow has a remarkable ability to absorb noise. Roads become silent, hooves become softer. Even voices seem to travel differently. You imagine the castle from above, towers rising through darkness, roofs covered in white, chimneys breathing smoke into the cold sky, a few scattered points of light glowing behind shutters. The entire complex surrounded by fields now hidden beneath drifting snow. The image feels peaceful, far more peaceful than the people actually responsible for keeping everything running probably feel. A faint smell reaches you. Smoke, fresh smoke, different from the fading embers in your hearth. Somewhere nearby, another fire has been lit. Perhaps a servant has added logs to a hallway brazier. Perhaps a kitchen hearth has been stirred. Perhaps guards have refreshed a fire near the gatehouse. The scent drifts briefly beneath the curtains before fading again. You close your eyes. The smell trigger is another image. A kitchen, dark except for firelight. A few exhausted workers still awake, one scrubbing a pot, another stacking wooden bowls, someone rubbing sore hands near the heat. Many household tasks happened after everyone else finished eating. Dishes had to be cleaned, tools stored, ashes managed, dough prepared for morning baking, and supplies organised. While guests slept, tomorrow quietly began taking shape. The thought makes this castle seem larger, not physically, temporally. The day never truly ends. One shift blends into another. One task prepares for the next. Even now, while you lie beneath blankets, someone is preparing breakfast that will not be eaten for several hours. The wind rattles the shutter lightly, not enough to concern you, just enough to remind you that winter still surrounds everything. You roll onto your other side. The mattress complains softly, then settles. A small gap opens between the bed curtains. Through it, you can see part of the chamber. The embers have dimmed further. Only a few red points remain. The table stands motionless in shadow. The tray from supper still waits near the door. The chest sits exactly where you left it. There is something reassuring about furniture at night. It asks very little of anyone. A forgotten detail hidden in a few household inventories is how many possessions people stored in chests, clothing, documents, linens, valuables, tools, and personal belongings often share the same sturdy wooden containers. The chest beside your bed is not merely furniture. It is storage, security, and organization all at once. You wonder what might be inside it. Extra blankets, perhaps. A folded cloak, wax tablets, a spare candle, maybe nothing at all. The records rarely provide enough detail to satisfy curiosity completely. You continue staring at the dark outline. Then your attention drifts upward. The ceiling timbers emerge faintly from the darkness. Massive pieces of wood, silent now, yet they have been carrying the weight of roof, snow, and weather for years, perhaps decades. Practical medieval construction depended heavily on skilled carpenters. A good timber frame represented knowledge accumulated across generations. Every joint, beam, and support carried lessons learned long before your arrival at this castle. The wind presses against the building again. The timbers answer with a low creak. Almost conversational, you imagine the castle speaking to itself. The roof asking whether everything remains secure, the walls replying that they have survived worse, the beams grumbling that snow is becoming heavy, the foundations refusing to participate in the discussion. A ridiculous image, yet somehow comforting. Outside, winter feels immense. Inside, everything feels personal. A servant carrying candles, a cook tending embers, a guard paced a wall, a carpenter's work holding firm, a chest waiting beside the bed. Small things, human things, the kinds of details that transform a fortress into a home. Your eyelids grow heavier. The brief interruption in the corridor has passed. The servant is somewhere else now. The lantern glow is gone. The smell of fresh smoke has faded. The chamber belongs once more to darkness and quiet. You pull the blanket slightly higher beneath your chin. The fabric scratches pleasantly against your skin. Your body has finally adapted to the room's temperature. Not because the chamber has become warm, because you have become part of it. The sounds no longer seem strange. The creaks no longer seem mysterious. Even the drafts feel familiar. You know where they come from. You know how the bed responds. You know the rhythm of the storm. The castle has introduced itself. And now, deep in the night, it feels less like a place where you are staying and more like a place where you belong. for a few hours at least, outside. Snow continues falling across the sleeping kingdom. Inside, unseen servants continue their work, and behind thick bed curtains in a stone chamber high above the courtyard, you drift slowly back towards sleep, while the hidden machinery of castle life keeps turning beneath the winter sky. When you next stir, the castle feels different. The change is subtle. No single sound announces it. No bell rings. No servant knocks. Yet something has shifted in the rhythm of the night. You remain beneath the blankets, eyes closed, listening carefully. The storm still exists. The wind still brushes the walls, but another layer of activity has emerged. The household is beginning to move. Not the entire household, not yet. Just the first few people whose duties start before everyone else's. A door opens somewhere below. Footsteps cross a floor. A bucket scrapes softly against stone. Then comes silence again. The pause is almost as important as the sounds themselves. Life inside a castle rarely moved all at once. Different people lived according to different responsibilities. Guards changed watches. Bakers rose early. Kitchen workers prepared fires. Stable hands checked animals. Clergy observed religious schedules. The day entered gradually, one person at a time. You open your eyes. The chamber remains dark, very dark, yet not completely. The blackness has softened slightly. The difference is almost impossible to notice directly. More a feeling than a sight. Perhaps somewhere beyond the clouds. The distant approach of dawn has begun. Not visible, not useful, just beginning. You shift beneath the blankets. The bed feels surprisingly comfortable now. Hours ago, it seemed cold, then merely tolerable. Now it feels almost welcoming. A reminder that human beings can adapt to nearly anything if given enough time and sufficient wool. The embers in the hearth have become faint red islands surrounded by grey ash. They no longer provide much heat, only memory. Yet even dying embers influence a room. They keep complete darkness away. They preserve the suggestion of warmth. You glance toward the gap in the curtains. The outline of the hearth is barely visible. The table is a shadow, the chest another shadow. The entire chamber seems suspended between night and morning. A horse nickers somewhere outside. The sound reaches you through layers of wall and distance. Then another horse answers. The stable yard is waking. Animals often notice approaching dawn before humans do. Their routines depend less on clocks and more on rhythms of light. Feeding and habit. Somewhere below, a stable hand may already be moving through the rows of stalls with a lantern in one hand and an increasingly complicated relationship with sleep in the other. You imagine him opening a stable door, cold air rushing inside, horses turning their heads expectantly, the messengers mount perhaps among them, rested now after its difficult journey through the snow. A faint smell reaches your chamber, not smoke this time, bread, fresh bread. The scent arrives so delicately that at first you think you imagined it. Then it comes again, warmer, clearer. Someone has begun baking. The effect on your stomach is immediate and unfair. A bakery at dawn possesses powers that should probably be regulated. Far below, ovens are being heated. Dough prepared the previous evening is likely being shaped, loaded, and watched with practiced attention. Bread remains one of the foundations of daily life, rich or poor, noble or servant. Almost everyone depends on it in one form or another. The smell lingers, then slowly fades, yet its presence changes the mood of the room. The castle no longer feels like a place enduring the night. It feels like a place preparing for tomorrow, or rather, preparing for today. The distinction matters. A sound comes from the passage. Soft footsteps, then another pair. People moving with purpose now, not rushing, simply beginning. You wonder about the Lord's household. Perhaps someone is already reviewing the message that arrived during the storm. Perhaps plans are being adjusted. Perhaps riders are being delayed until roads can be inspected. Snow changes schedules, it changes priorities. Even powerful people must negotiate with weather. The records left behind by medieval administrators often reveal astonishing attention to practical details. Grain, livestock, fuel, repairs, labour obligations, rents, roads, bridges, and supplies all required management. A castle was not merely a residence, it was an operational centre for surrounding lands, yet lying here beneath blankets. Those responsibilities feel wonderfully distant. Someone else may worry about roads. Someone else may worry about grain. You're currently focused on remaining warm. A very respectable goal. The wind has weakened slightly, or perhaps the snow has changed the way sound travels. Either way, the storm feels less aggressive than earlier. The castle no longer seems under siege by winter. Instead, winter and castle appear to have reached an understanding. You stay on your side. Watching the faint darkness beyond the curtain, the room slowly reveals itself. Not much, just enough. The edge of the table, the outline of the hearth, the shape of the chest. Objects return one by one from the night. A rooster crows somewhere beyond the walls. The sound arrives faintly through unknown distance. Then another answers farther away. The countryside is waking too. Villages hidden beneath drifts. Farmhouses surrounded by white fields. Small communities preparing to discover what the blizzard has left behind. The first people stepping outside this morning will learn important things very quickly. How deep the snow is. Whether paths remain visible. Which fences survived. Whether roofs held. How much work awaits. You are grateful not to be first. A rarely noticed reality of winter mornings is that someone always has to be the first person outside. History rarely remembers that individual. Yet they exist in every generation. The first servant into the courtyard. The first farmer onto the path. The first guard onto the wall. The first stable hand into the cold. The first person to discover exactly what the night has done. A log shifts within the hearth. One last glow brightens briefly, then fades. The chamber grows slightly cooler, yet the coming morning compensates. The darkness is retreating now, slowly, reluctantly, but undeniably. You can see the curtain fabric more clearly. You can distinguish wall from floor. You can recognize the stool beside the table. The night has not ended. Still a poet has lost control. You stretch carefully beneath the blankets. The movement feels wonderful. Your back protests slightly. Your shoulders crack softly. The bed answers with familiar creaks. Together you have survived another medieval night. Outside, snow still covers the kingdom. Inside, the castle is beginning to breathe. So breathe faster. Bakers, servants, stable workers, clerks, guards, and household officials are stirring one by one. Soon voices will return, doors will open, fires will be fed, news will be discussed, tasks will begin. For now, however, you remain wrapped in warmth while dawn approaches through layers of cloud and snow, and the great household below slowly awakens beneath the fading rule of night. The sound reaches you before the image does, a low rush, a hard scope. Then, a muffled thump somewhere above and beyond the chamber wall. You open your eyes. For a few breaths, you do not move. The castle has been speaking all night, but this sound is different. It comes from higher up, from the direction of the outer walls and battlements, where guards still keep watch while the rest of the household slowly wakes beneath blankets, beams, and smoke. The storm has shifted again, not vanished, changed. Wind now drives snow against the upper parts of the castle with a heavier force, sending loose drifts sliding from ledges and roof lines. The sound repeats, rush, scrape, soft collapse. You lie still and picture the battlements above, stone walkways dusted white, parapets capped with snow, narrow steps slick with ice, a guard wrapped in wool, leather, and whatever patience remains after hours outside. He paces because standing still would be foolish. Stillness invites cold to settle into joints, fingers, and thoughts. Movement keeps the blood awake. You imagine him leaning into the wind, one hand near the wall, boots testing each step before committing weight. There is no dramatic moonlight tonight, no shining armour, no heroic pose, just a tired man on a frozen wall. Oh no. Doing a job that looks better in songs than it feels in winter. Above the courtyard, the battlements are not simply symbols, they are working spaces. Men stand there, they watch roads, they check gates, they listen for sounds beyond the walls. In weather like this, they also judge the storm itself. Snow can hide movement, but it can also make movement nearly impossible. A blizzard protects and threatens at the same time. You pull the blanket closer around your shoulders, inside the bed curtains. You feel the difference between your world and his. You have wool over you, he has wool around him. That is not the same thing. The wind strikes again. This time something rattles along the roofline. Perhaps loosened ice, perhaps a small piece of debris carried by the gust. No shout follows, no alarm bell sounds. Good. The castle is only weathering the storm. Still, you remain awake. The room is dimmer than before, but dawn has begun to press faint greyness against the shutter. The embers in the hearth are nearly gone. The bed remains the warmest place in the chamber, and that makes leaving it seem deeply unwise. Yet your mind is no longer entirely in the room. It climbs outward, up the stair, along the passage, through a cold doorway, onto the wall walk. You imagine looking across the kingdom from the battlements, except there is no kingdom to see, only white motion. Snow fills the air until distance disappears. The nearest roofs within the castle show as pale shapes. The courtyard lies below under uneven drifts. Beyond the outer wall, fields and roads have become one blank surface. Trees appear as dark marks in a world otherwise erased. In clear weather, a guard might see smoke from village chimneys, movement on a road, perhaps the shape of a distant church tower. Tonight, sight reaches only a short way before snow takes everything. That must change how a person thinks. When you cannot see far, the world becomes immediate. Wall, gate, torch, companion, breath, cold fingers, next step. You hear another sound, fainter this time, a voice outside, carried strangely by the storm. Then another voice answers. The words vanish before reaching you. The guards are speaking to one another. Perhaps one asks about the gate. Perhaps another curses the wind. Perhaps they are discussing breakfast, because even medieval sentries are allowed to think about bread. Their voices comfort you. The upper walls are occupied. Someone is watching. Someone is awake. Your chamber, your bed, your small pocket of warmth. All of it rests inside a chain of human attention. The servants below tend fires and food. The stable hands tend animals. The guards above tend the boundary between shelter and the unknown. A small thing occurs to you. The castle is not safe because it is stone. It is safe because people keep working within and upon that stone, without guards, doors, servants, food, fire, repair and memory. Even the strongest wall becomes only a cold ruin waiting for ivy. The wind lessens for a moment. The silence that follows feels wide. Then, from the wall above, comes a faint metallic tap. 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 Perhaps a spear butt against stone as a guard walks. Perhaps ice knocked from a step. Perhaps an iron fitting moving in the cold. The exact cause does not matter. The rhythm feels steady, human, measured. You settle deeper into the pillow. The cloth smells faintly of smoke and wool. Your breathing warms a small space near your face. The blankets hold firm. The chill remains outside their borders, prowling but not entering. In another century, in another kind of history, people might describe the battlements in grand language. Flag snapping, trumpets sounding, armoured men watching the horizon. But this is the hour when grandeur is asleep. Only the practical remains. A guard must keep his footing. A torch must stay lit. A latch must be checked. A patch of ice must be avoided. The kingdom beyond the wall may be enormous, filled with villages, forests, rivers, farms, markets, churches, mills, and roads. Yet from the battlement tonight, it probably feels no larger than the few yards visible through snow. You remember the gatehouse from your arrival, the guards with red noses, the horse steaming in lantern light, the messenger bringing news from beyond the storm. That passage now lies sealed behind you. The same men, or others like them, still hold the entrance while snow gathers against the outer arch. Somewhere outside, perhaps the road is already buried so deeply that even a familiar traveller would hesitate before trying it. A hedge might look like a drift, a ditch might disappear, a frozen rut might wait beneath fresh powder. Distance becomes not only longer, but uncertain. On the battlements, the guard sees none of this clearly. He only sees enough to know that the world has changed overnight. You hear a heavier sound now, a dull scrape followed by a fall of snow into the courtyard. Someone above has pushed a drift away from a walkway or roof edge, and the snow lands below with a soft, heavy hush. A few moments later, a voice calls down, another answers from the yard. The castle is waking upward and downward at once. The wall above, the yard below, the kitchens beneath, the chamber between. You lie in the middle of it all, wrapped in blankets like the least useful but most comfortable member of the operation. Fair enough. History needs witnesses too. The grey light at the shutter strengthens slightly. The bed curtains no longer glow red from the hearth. They now show their woven texture in faint morning colour. The room is returning. Soon you will have to rise. Not yet. For now, the battlements remain in your imagination, high above the chamber, where guards pace through blowing snow and look out upon a kingdom reduced to whiteness. The storm continues beyond them, the castle endures beneath them, and you, still sheltered behind curtains and wool, listen to the wall keep watch until morning comes fully enough to reveal what the blizzard has done. At some point between wakefulness and sleep, the battlements disappear, the guards, the snow, the distant voices, all of it drifts away. You do not remember the exact moment. One thought simply blends into another until the chamber begins changing shape. The bed remains beneath you, the blankets still rest against your shoulders, yet your mind starts weaving the sounds of the castle into something else. The wind becomes a river. The crack of settling timber becomes a gate closing somewhere far away. The faint creak of the bed frame becomes footsteps in an empty corridor. Dreams arrive quietly in places like this. Not with fanfare, not with dramatic announcements, just a gradual loosening of the boundary between memory and imagination. You find yourself walking through the castle, not the real castle, a dream version, the kind assembled from fragments gathered throughout the night. The hall is there, only larger. The gatehouse appears too. Yet the snow beyond it glows silver rather than white. The hearth burns brighter than any real fire. Every doorway leads somewhere interesting. Dreams are generous with architecture. You wander through familiar passages. The walls seem warmer. The candles never burn out. The stairs are somehow easier to climb than they were in reality. A remarkable improvement. Your dream self appreciates the convenience. Somewhere a bell rings, not loudly, just enough to echo through stone. You follow the sound. The chapel appears ahead. Its candles flicker gently. No one speaks. The air smells faintly of wax and smoke. You pause in the doorway, then the scene changes. That is the trouble with dreams. No respect for continuity. One moment you stand beside an altar, the next you are looking down from a tower. The blizzard stretches across the kingdom. Yet instead of danger, it appears beautiful. Snow covers every field, every road, every rooftop. The landscape becomes one vast white blanket. You understand something in the dream, not through words, through feeling. The storm that seemed so large during the night is only one moment in a much longer story. Winter arrives. Winter leaves, snow falls, snow melts, The castle remains, generations pass through its chambers, children become adults, servants become elders, lords come and go, the walls watch all of it. A small detail survives in some medieval writings about dreams and sleep. People often viewed dreams very differently from modern audiences. Some regarded them as spiritual experiences, others saw them as reflections of daily concerns, physical conditions or divine messages. Many probably treated them much as we do now, interesting when pleasant, worrying when strange, and forgotten by breakfast. Your own dream seems content to remain mysterious. The tower vanishes. Now you are standing in the courtyard. Fresh snow covers everything. No footprints, no wheel tracks, no signs of movement. The castle appears untouched, silent, perfect. For a moment you simply look. The snow reflects soft light from an invisible source. Every roofline seems sharper, every stone clearer. Then you notice something, a single set of footprints crossing the yard. You follow them. Naturally, dreams encourage terrible decisions. The tracks lead toward the gatehouse, then beyond it, outside the walls, into the drifting snow. You hesitate, then continue. The countryside opens before you. Fields stretch outward beneath white clouds. Trees stand motionless beneath their burdens of snow. The world feels enormous and empty, yet not lonely. Somehow the emptiness feels peaceful. The footprints continue. You follow them over a small rise. Beyond it stands a road. Or what used to be a road. Snow covers most of it. Only faint lines remain. You recognize it. The same road you travelled before reaching the castle. The same road that brought you through the storm. Only now it appears calm. Sunlight breaks through clouds. The air feels still. The storm has already passed. Perhaps that is what dreams do best. They remind us that difficult moments eventually become memories. A crow lands on a fence post. Its dark feathers contrast sharply against the snow. The bird tilts its head, looks at you, then flies away. Immediately the scene changes again. You are back inside the castle, this time beside the hearth in your chamber. Only the fire burns higher than before. The room feels warm, truly warm, an obvious sign that reality is no longer involved. You laugh softly. Even within the dream you know this part is unrealistic. The fire crackles, the curtains sway, the wind outside sounds distant, comfortable, tamed. You settle into a chair that does not actually exist in the room. Dreams remain committed to convenience. The castle seems peaceful now. The night's worries have faded. The messenger has arrived safely. The roads no longer matter. The storm no longer threatens. Everything feels complete. Then a real sound enters the dream. A door closing somewhere beyond your chamber. The noise slips into the dream like a stone dropped into still water. The images ripple. The courtyard blurs. The fire dims. The imagined chair disappears. You begin rising towards the wakefulness again. Not fully, only slightly. Enough to notice the blankets. Enough to feel the mattress beneath you. Enough to hear distant movement somewhere within the castle. The dream retreats, not suddenly, slowly, like mist leaving a field. Fragments remain, the snowy road, the tower, the footprint, the crow. Then even those begin fading. Your eyes remain closed. The room around you grows clearer. The wind outside sounds real again. The bed feels real. The cold feels very real. The dream world withdraws completely, yet it leaves behind a curious sense of calm. The storm still exists. The castle still creaks. Morning has not fully arrived, but something feels different. Perhaps because sleep has finally done its work. Perhaps because dawn is approaching. Perhaps because even in the middle of a difficult winter, the mind occasionally finds ways to wander through peaceful places. You settle deeper into the pillow. The chamber remains quiet. The castle continues waking around you, and somewhere between the fading dream and the coming day, you rest for a little while longer while snow lies across the kingdom and pale morning waits just beyond the clouds. You finally leave the bed. It takes courage, not heroic courage, not the kind sung about in great halls, the smaller kind. The kind required to step out from beneath warm blankets into a cold room on a winter morning. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders and stand for a moment while the chamber reminds you exactly how much you've been relying on the bed for survival. The floor is cold, the air is cold, even the stool looks cold, only the growing daylight softens the experience. The room no longer belongs to the night. Its details stand openly before you. The chest, the table, the tray, the faded wall hanging, the empty hearth. Everything looks simpler in daylight, less mysterious, more practical. A knock sounds at the door. This time it comes with confidence, morning confidence, the sort that assumes people should already be awake and contributing to society. You open the door. A servant stands outside carrying fresh bread and a small jug. Warm vapour rises from the jug's mouth. The smell alone improves the day. The servant offers a brief greeting and steps inside. His boots leave sap marks on the floorboards where snow has melted. A few flakes still cling stubbornly to his cloak. He sets the food on the table and glances toward the shutter. "Still coming down," he mutters. Then he is gone. Just like that, the castle swallows him again. You close the door and move toward the table. The bread is warm enough to fog the cool air around it. You tear off a piece as steam escapes. For a moment you simply hold it. There is something deeply comforting about fresh bread during bad weather. Perhaps because it means somebody woke early. Somebody lit ovens. Somebody prepared dough. Somebody carried food through cold corridors. The storm may cover the world outside, but life continues. You eat slowly. The jug contains warm ale. Not hot, not cold, just warm enough to feel welcome. Outside the shutter, a muffled scraping sound continues. Snow clearing. The castle is digging itself out. You imagine workers pushing drifts away from entrances and pathways. Every cleared section immediately begins attracting footsteps. The moment a path appears, people start using it. Human beings seem incapable of leaving a clear route alone. Curiosity alone guarantees traffic. You open the shutter again. The courtyard looks busier than before. Several narrow tracks now cross the snow. The white surface that appeared untouched earlier has become a web of movement. A man carries a bundle of firewood toward the hall. Two boys drag a sled loaded with sacks. A woman crosses carefully with a basket balanced against her hip. Near the gatehouse, several workers shovel steadily. The snow has not defeated anyone. It has simply given everyone extra tasks. A dog bounds across the courtyard and immediately disappears chest-deep into a drift. After a brief struggle, it emerges with Denise damaged but enthusiasm intact. You watch it continue on its way. The dog clearly believes this is the greatest morning in recorded history. Snow has that effect on certain creatures. Far beyond the walls, visibility remains poor. The countryside appears as layers of pale grey. The horizon has vanished. The kingdom feels smaller than it did yesterday. Not because it is smaller, because the weather has folded parts of it out of sight. The same villages remain, the same roads, the same rivers. They are simply hidden. A bell rings somewhere below. Not urgent, just part of the morning. The sound drifts upward through the cold air. People react without hesitation. A servant changes direction. Another disappears through a doorway. The household moves according to rhythms learned long ago. You close the shutter and return to the table. The bread is already disappearing. A good sign. The room itself feels different now. The chamber carried you through the night. Now it seems ready to hand you back to the day. The bed no longer dominates the space. The table does, the door does, the window does. Night focuses attention inward. Morning turns it outward. You think again of the messenger who arrived through the storm. His news has probably spread by now, perhaps not to every servant and stable boy, but certainly to the people responsible for making decisions somewhere in the castle. Plans are being discussed: road conditions, supplies, travel, tenants, weather, the practical concerns of winter, yet none of those conversations reach your chamber. Only fragments arrive. A passing voice, a distant footstep, a door opening and closing. The castle guards its secret surprisingly well. A stronger burst of activity rises from below. Voices, laughter, the sound of something heavy being moved. You lean slightly toward the window. Curiosity wins. Again. The courtyard has become fully alive. People move in every direction. The snow remains deep, but pathways are emerging. A line of footprints connects the hall to the kitchens. Another reaches the stables. Near one wall, several men work together to clear a larger space. Their breath hangs in the air. Their shovels rise and fall steadily. No one appears especially cheerful about the labour. No one appears surprised by it either. Winter arrived. Work followed. That seems to be the arrangement. The clouds overhead remain thick. The sun never truly appears. Instead, the entire sky glows with pale silver light. The effect makes the snow seem brighter, almost luminous. For a moment, the castle looks beautiful. Not grand, not dramatic, simply beautiful. The kind of beauty that arrives when ordinary things endure difficult conditions: stone walls, wooden doors, and smoking chimneys, people carrying out familiar tasks, a household waking after a long storm. You finish the last of the bread. The warmth from the ale lingers pleasantly, sir. The chamber no longer feels like a refuge from the night. It feels like a place you're preparing to leave. The castle beyond the door calls for attention. Voices continue passing in the corridor. The day continues unfolding. The blizzard still grips the kingdom, but morning has claimed the castle, and as you stand beside the shutter watching fresh tracks appear across the stow, you realize that the long winter night has finally become a memory. You stand by the shutter for a little longer. There is no rush. The castle is awake. The day has begun. The snow will remain whether you hurry or not. Below, the courtyard continues filling with the movement. New tracks cross older tracks. Workers pass each other, carrying wood, baskets, tools and messages. A servant emerges from one doorway, pauses to judge the weather, immediately regrets looking at it, and disappears back inside. A sensible decision. The storm has weakened, but winter still holds the kingdom firmly in its grip. The sky remains pale and heavy. The wind moves loose snow across rooftops in thin white ribbons. Smoke rises from chimneys and drifts sideways before vanishing into the grey distance. You watch quietly. There is something satisfying about seeing a place return to itself after a difficult night. Yesterday evening, the castle felt defensive, closed, protective. The gates stood between warmth and danger. The walls held back darkness. The hearths pushed against the cold. Now the mood has changed. The castle is no longer enduring the storm. It is working through the consequences. Snow must be cleared. Animals must be fed. Bread must be baked. Messages must be delivered. Life continues, and life, as it turns out, is remarkably persistent. You leave the window and gather your belongings. The chamber feels different now that departure approaches. Every room changes when you know your time inside it is ending. The bed that seemed so important during the night becomes simply a bed again. The chairless corner remains a corner. The chest remains a chest. The walls return to being walls, yet traces of the night linger. You remember the glow of the hearth, the whistle of wind through hidden cracks, the distant bell, the footsteps in the passage, the servant carrying firewood, the dream of snow-covered roads, the guards on the battlements. All those moments remain attached to the room, even though the room itself appears unchanged. You fasten your cloak. The familiar weight settles across your shoulders. Outside the chamber, The castle continues humming with activity. A voice passes through the corridor. Someone laughs. A door closes. Morning has found its rhythm. You take one final look around. The chamber is quiet, peaceful, no longer mysterious. Just a place where a traveller spent one winter night while a blizzard crossed England, and somehow that feels enough. You open the door. The passage beyond is brighter than before. Light from narrow windows and open doorways reaches into spaces that belonged to Shadow only a few hours ago. A servant carrying folded linens passes with a polite nod. Another moves in the opposite direction with an armful of firewood. The castle seems smaller now that daylight reveals it clearly, not because it has changed, because familiarity has replaced uncertainty. You know its sounds, its spells, its draught, its rhythms. The stair that felt mysterious last night is merely a stair. The passage is merely a passage. The door to your chamber is simply one among many. You descend slowly. The stone steps remain cold. Some things never change. As you move downward, warmth gradually increases. The scent of food grows stronger. Voices become louder. The great hall approaches. Soon you step into it once more. The transformation surprises you. Where firelight and shadow once ruled, daylight now fills the space. The hall remains busy. Servants move between tables. A dog sleeps near the hearth in exactly the same position as before, apparently convinced that this location represents the peak of civilization. Difficult to argue with that conclusion. Several travellers gather near one side of the room. Some study the weather through open doors. Others discuss road conditions. Everyone seems to share the same question. What happens next? The answer, of course, depends on the snow. It always depends on the snow. You cross the hall slowly. The fire burns bright once again. Fresh logs crackle. Warmth spreads outward. People drift toward it naturally. Our habits require no explanation. Beyond the hall doors, the courtyard waits. You step outside. Cold air greets you immediately, sharp, clean, bright. The snow reflects enough light to make the entire world seem larger. Workers continue clearing paths. A horse emerges from the stable, snorting clouds of vapour into the air. The gatehouse stands watch at the far end of the yard, the same gatehouse that welcomed you through darkness and blowing snow. Now it appears almost ordinary. That is the magic of daylight. It turns mysteries into buildings. You walk slowly across the cleared path. Snow crunches beneath your boots. The sound feels familiar now. Everything feels familiar. The castle, the storm, the winter air, even the distant countryside hidden beyond the grey skies. You stop for a moment and look around. The towers rise above you. The walls stretch outward. Smoke drifts overhead. People move through their morning tasks. The castle is alive, not because of stone, not because of timber, because of people. People carrying wood, people baking bread, people clearing snow, people tending fires, people opening doors, people watching walls, people helping one another through another winter day. The storm came. The storm stayed. The storm passed. And still the castle remained full of ordinary lives. That may be the most remarkable thing of all. As you stand in the snowy courtyard, the kingdom beyond remains hidden beneath cloud and white drifts. Yet the day continues, the paths widen, the fires burn, the bells ring. The bread emerges from ovens, the horses stamp in their stalls. Life moves forward, and as the morning settles across the castle and the long night finally fades completely into memory, you carry with you the quiet knowledge that for one winter evening in 1288 you found warmth, shelter, and rest behind stone walls while a blizzard swept across the kingdom. The morning continues gently around you. The voices in the courtyard seem softer now. The wind no longer feels sharp, only distant. Snow rests peacefully on roofs and walls, shining beneath a pale sky. You allow the scene to grow quieter. The workers become smaller. The sounds drift farther away. The castle settles into a calm rhythm of firelight, footsteps and breathing stone. There is nothing more to do, no road to follow, no gate to reach, no storm to outrun, only the simple comfort of knowing that the night has passed. The hearths are warm, the doors are secure. The kingdom sleeps beneath its blanket of snow while morning unfolds one careful moment at a time. You imagine the chamber one last time, the bed curtains, the fading embers, the thick blankets, the whisper of wind beyond the shutter, the room waiting quietly above the hall, safe, still, untroubled. Perhaps another traveller will sleep there tomorrow night. Perhaps another storm will come. Perhaps another winter many years from now will rattle the same shutters and press against the same walls. The castle will listen, just as it listened tonight, and now, as the snow drifts softly across the rooftops and the fires glow steadily within, you can let the image fade, the towers soften into mist, the courtyard grows quiet, the footprints disappear beneath fresh snow. The bells become distant echoes. Everything slows, everything softens, everything rests. And with the castle warm behind its walls and the kingdom peaceful beneath winter skies, you can finally settle into stillness, letting the last traces of the storm drift away like snowflakes carried gently across the morning air. Sweet dreams.